Good evening, everybody. This is Ven Jagaro from Empty Cloud Monastery. I hope everybody can hear me. I saying hello to Maria, Kobe, and Rick. So I'm sure there's some others as well. So tonight I was asked by Bhante Sudasa and Ayasoma to share some reflections on Dhamma. And so yeah, and then I think afterwards we can have some time for some questions and answers as well. So I guess we can start. So first, let's pay homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So this week, starting on Monday, the residents at Empty Cloud have entered into retreat, and I think it will be going on until through Friday. And it's actually been quite a delight to see everybody come together and practice very diligently. This afternoon, I wasn't part of the crowd, but they decided to, I think their other residents decided to go down to the nearby forest/park and have some meditation outdoors because it's actually starting to warm up now. And that actually gave me some time to do a little cleaning here as moving rooms here. And yeah, it's just been very quiet, very peaceful, and just a lot of, I don't know, there's something in the air. I can see people doing walking meditation and being very diligent with keeping noble silence and attending to their various duties. And so, yeah, there's something about that when you're part of a group of people that are practicing earnestly and sincerely, that it uplifts the heart. It really, it brightens the mind and brings a little smile to one's face, at least my face. Hope that's not distracting for the residents, but yeah, it's just something really nice about that. And so, that was kind of reflecting on, what to talk about tonight. And I think, one thing that might be nice to kind of talk about would be the 5 hindrances, or the nivaranas, or pancha nivaranas, pancha being 5. And so these were, the Buddha identified, 5, they're often translated as hindrances or obstacles, but other people, I think, translate, and I think there's merit to this, as kind of like covering overs, or like obscurations, because these let's say these kind of states of mind, these qualities of mind, when they come in, they really prevent the mind from being within itself, enjoying itself, enjoying its own internal landscape. And so it's these are things that are commonly encountering when we sit down to try to meditate, especially when we sit down and try to meditate for longer periods of time, like in retreat. These things really come to, we usually find ourselves in these kind of initial phases trying to wrestle you could say, with these certain states of mind. So I thought that maybe talk about this a little bit. So maybe, I was thinking almost to even step back a little bit, because often, we sit down to meditate and, we have instructions, whether it's to, to, let's say, do anapanasati, to do mindfulness of breathing, or do mindfulness of the body, or mindfulness of different ways. One, like there's a calm method of going through the body systematically, focusing on the actual the way the body feels, or to contemplate the body in terms of the different parts of the body, or to do, let's say, for example, death contemplation, or maybe do mindfulness of the various signs of the Brahma Viharas, for example, metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. There's all sorts of meditations, right? So we sit down, we have an intention, and okay, I'm gonna, let's say, be with my breath, and I sit down, and maybe the mind can start to view the breath for a few moments, and all of a sudden it's agitated, and it doesn't want to be with the breath. It starts maybe it starts thinking about something it's got something that's going to go that it's worried about, or something that in the past, a long time ago. And so usually, like, one thing that maybe before you start with the 5 hindrances is just to recognize it's like this kind of basic movement. Often, if it has the mind has trouble settling, it often is how do you say usually in thought of sometime in the past, or thinking about something in the future. So it's these kind of, it's really kind of get a kind of that kind of feeling for that landscape. So we sit down, just can the mind be just as they say, in the present, just can it be willing to drop and put down, just put aside anything that we have to deal with in the future, or any of the concerns or struggles or things that it might have in the past. And this is actually something to engage in with the mind and actually practice. And for example, I have sometimes we have like objects, for example, like physical objects in front of us. Like I have in my third row, my Sangati at the side of me, I have a cup of water, I could, for example, I can show a cup of water to the screen. So I can, for example, hold this cup of water on my lap, right? Or I can put it down, right? It's still there, right? But I'm not physically engaged with it. And so there's a similar process of the mind, in that it doesn't necessarily mean we've really relinquished some of these things, let's say in the past and the future, but can we encourage the mind to actually, for this period of time of meditation, whether it's an hour, or hour and a half, or half an hour, to put the thought down, put that concern down. And so this is something that is worth engaging with, to at the beginning of the meditation, say, okay, there you got a sense, oh, maybe it there is something that it is concerned about. It's like, oh, can we put this to the side, and then after the meditation, if the mind wants it, can pick it up again, but can we put it down? And this is an exercise actually to try to encourage, convince, see if you can almost communicate with yourself to put something down with regards to the past and the future. And then similarly, there's often the mind will often it might be kind of wanting something, let's say concerned with wanting something with respect to things kind of external, things outside, right? Or it doesn't want something. And so that's another thing to kind of think about too. There might, instead of necessarily past and future, it may just be oh gosh, can't wait for the meal, right? It just really obsessed about what's going to be in the meal, how it's going to, what food I'm going to put in my plate, and I'm going to put this first, and that I think it'll be that last second, and I get really sort of obsessed, or it really wants to, let's say, avoid something. It's really like, oh, I don't want to deal with that thing, and I really don't like doing this chore, and I don't want to deal, so sometimes it will have a flavor of really sort of grasping after something or pushing something away. And so again, it's worth just, again, at the beginning of the meditation session, to say, okay, to see if you encourage your mind to just be willing to put things down just for that meditation session. And as an exercise, a way of trying to engage, and then also trying to understand what is it kind of starting to get you're trying to get a feel for what the mind is actually searching for. What is it actually seeking? Um, and so these are some basic things to get a feel for, even before trying to maybe kind of identify, using, let's say, the five hindrances as a way of trying to understand what might be kind of preventing the mind from settling with an object that you wish to be with during meditation. So to get into the five hindrances, so the first one is called sensual desire, or sensual lust. The second is ill will, or maybe anger or aversion. The third would be sloth and torpor, maybe drowsiness or sleepiness. The fifth one would be like restlessness. It's often called restlessness and remorse. And then the fifth one would be doubt. So these five hindrances can give us an idea, kind of a framework, when we're finding the mind is not settling with the meditation object, to get a sense of, oh, like, okay, what is the prominent hindrance that the mind is experiencing right now, right? And so once you can get a flavor, oh, this, let's say, like, sensual desire, right? So I brought before the kind of example of food. The mind might be really obsessed with food, and think about cooking food and eating food, and food for the next day, and who knows, and so it might be, and then you get a sense, okay, it's really interested in sensual desire, and then you can start to go, okay, so I can address that particular hindrance with a particular, you could say, counter, right? So there's some, for example, classical counters around sensual desire. For example, if the mind is really obsessed about food, one can just maybe actively reflect. So instead of maybe put aside the meditation for a moment and then start to actively reflect. Okay, if I'm going to eat, right, I have to. You can do think about the body, right? There's some body contemplation, right? The food has this kind of tendency. We have a tendency of looking at food as it is, appetizing, appealing, something that's worth obsessing about. But when you actually look at, for example, we have this big bin in the kitchen with a bunch of compost, right? You just open the bin and just look at it, right? I mean, just spend some time looking at it. It's not that much different than what you put in your bowl to eat. And if usually I look at it, it's not particularly appetizing, right? If there's a couple of cats here, and one day one of the cats, the food didn't agree with it so well, so it actually threw up. And so I remember, I was cleaning it up, and I was looking at it. I was like, yeah, this is pretty unappetizing. But this is actually what's inside of us, right? If we eat food, right? And so it's worth actually, I'm not saying you should, regurgitate your food so you can contemplate it, but I think that might upset the other venerables if you decide to. So don't do that, please. But you try to, you have memories of probably being sick and regurgitating your food, and it's also quite unpleasant, all that acid or whatever. Yeah, well, and then of course, when it passes through the system, it's probably actually more appetizing when it's here. When it gets further down the system into the intestines, it actually gets quite unpleasant at this point. And so this is the journey that food goes through, right? And of course, when we excrete it, the bathroom, you can spend a few moments, look, after you use the toilet, and look at it. This is where the food goes, right? And so what you're doing behind this is you're actually spending some time trying to get familiar with the whole process of something that you're obsessed about, right? This mind's obsessed about food, and getting a kind of another look at it, right? So this is just one example of something that one can do with one particular hindrance. And the basic principle here, of course, is if there's a particular hindrance, and then going, okay, what will actually help balance the mind? What will maybe help the mind lose its kind of fascination or grip around that particular hindrance, right? So that's something, let's say, with sensual desire, with ill will, right? Of course, the classic, maybe you could say counter to ill will might be metta, right? But I would even say, like, even like on a more really basic level, like, like if there's like some sort of aversion, whether it's ill will or hostility or whatever, like, that real basic willingness to be friendly and open to beings or experience, that's a really powerful way of just starting to you could say, like, lose that grip that ill will might have on the mind, because one is starting to add something to that experience of ill will. One is starting to add something that's wholesome, and you could say, yeah, kind of really kind of loosens that grip that it has. So of course, again, well, the common counter is metta, but it can be really a lot of I would say that karuna can also be a good antidote. Mudita, I would say appreciation as well. These are all can be really good, helpful things around ill will. Reflecting on the drawbacks of being in ill will, it's actually, if you just stop and go, what is this actually like? It's actually pretty unpleasant. And if you have, let's say, ill will towards a person, it's like, I gotta keep thinking about this person I really hate, It's just like, you're gonna keep churning, keep churning and churning. It's like, my mind can't, it's like, do you why do you really want to keep doing this? See, it's worth maybe spending some time, putting down the meditation and actually just engage with the mind. Say, mind, do you really want to do this? Is this really helpful? And trying different ways of engaging with the mind and seeing what can help start to loosen that grip. So the next hindrance would be sloth and torpor. So this often manifests itself in like sleepiness, or just doing anything, or maybe just tired, or the enjoyment of being sleepy and being spaced out. I remember like when I started to meditate, like this was like a long time ago, and it was kind of neat, like doing meditation and being really sleepy, and because you get a sense of everything being really peaceful, right? but then I was, well, wait a minute, like the mind's not really aware of anything. It's just like this cloudy mess, right? But it was like, oh, at least it's peaceful, right? you know, and so you can kind of understand the appeal, right? It can, at least if it's drowsy, it maybe some of the agitation is a little bit less. But yeah, there's no clarity of the mind. There's just, it's not really able to be with anything, right? So one of the classical counters of this, I've heard, I haven't tried this myself, but meditating on the perception of light. I've seen some people in monastics, they, for example, they have like a candle or maybe a light that they will actually look at. And sometimes people do something more vigorous. I think I prefer doing things like walking meditation, right? If I'm just really tired, just do some walking meditation, right? I mean, it is actually still possible to nearly fall asleep even walking if you're really tired, but it's usually like if the drowsiness is not too strong, usually something like walking, or maybe like I know a lot of people enjoy chanting. That can be something much more vigorous. So like practice some chanting, right? Um, 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 so these are some methods, and the basic idea is you're just trying to engage the mind, activate the mind, and also like try to find out what is the mind interested in, right? Right? Like maybe this actually might be a good time to actually, read some suttas, like what is there a sutta that a mind might be interested in, right? Like a particular theme, or there's a lot of Dhamma books here in the library. So this might be a time, oh gosh, it's really drowsy. Maybe it's a time to figure out, okay, what is the mind interested in right now? Fourth one, it would be, it's often called like restless remorse. So maybe I'll kind of like separate those. So like restlessness is like that, yeah, just kind of like that feeling of, it just can't, the mind does not want to stay still. Or just really, really averse to things being, calm and peaceful, right? It's like, just can't, just has to do something, right? And so I think the classical counter to this would be any sort of tranquility meditation, maybe mindfulness of breathing, for example. So let's say you're doing, maybe the meditation you're doing is a lot of, let's say, metta or a subha contemplation, or something else, and you find that the mind's really restless. Well, try mindfulness of breathing. See, rest, or try another meditation that might be very soothing. Or maybe, if the mind's trouble doing that, then okay, just ask yourself, like, what actually would be soothing right now? And just for myself right now, it's like, oh, like if I maybe just kind of like just relaxing my body, maybe doing a little stretching, and rubbing my legs a little, you know, and then you look around the room, it's like, what's the most peaceful thing in the room? It's like, for me, whatever reason, the lights are actually quite, even though they're fluorescent, I know a lot of people like fluorescent lights. I actually kind of like that little shimmering bodies. So anyways, so the idea is just to find either a meditation or something more coarse that can help the mind settle. If the mind, let's say, is feeling remorseful, and maybe it's kind of really thinking about something that it's done in the past, that's really, then it's actually probably that might be a good to reflect on, doing things something like metta, right? And just also recognizing that, okay, maybe there was a mistake, right? Acknowledging that was a mistake, but wait a minute, like, there's, if anybody is, well, anybody here at the monastery, but if anybody's meditating, anybody has a Buddhist practice, there's a lot of good. I mean, there's no way you could be in this situation unless there was a tremendous amount of good that you've done in the past, whether it's past lives or even this life, right? It's just not possible. I guess it is probably maybe technically possible. Somebody could just some sort of like axe murderer can like stumble into a like meditation retreat. I guess that's like the Angulimala kind of thing, but kind of putting aside very, very extreme sort of situations, like people have a lot of good, and it's really good. It's really important actually to remember that, especially if the mind is sort of drowning in or remorse about something in the past. And the last one would be last hindrance would be doubt. So actually, I don't know what the classical counter to doubt is. I would imagine it might be something like, what, you know?
I was just finding like, that's not necessarily in meditation. Well, I guess you could use in meditation, but reading the suttas, listening to Dhamma talks, and then I could see in meditation looking at the benefits of the mind that has confidence and saddha in the teachings. What is reflecting, I would say, even on Buddha Sati, like reflecting on the Buddha Dhamma Sangha to inspire that confidence and inspire that.
I think that sounds right. Like Samana Methiko has mentioned like the Buddha Nusati, Dhamma Nusati, and Sangha Nusati. So basically reflections on the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha, and the noble Arya, that those have actually attained various stages of awakening. And that, the kind of, this would be like, just like reflecting like, oh, wait a minute, like I wouldn't be doing this unless I had some amount of confidence in the Buddha, right? Unless I had some amount of confidence that something was possible through this kind of practice, that, like, I think there are beings that actually have done this, right? That, it doesn't have to be like an all or nothing thing, but that there's some amount of confidence in these, and that there's actually inspiration when you actually, for example, think about this being, and you, Ajahn Brahmala was here recently, and he said something kind of about the Buddha, basically describing him. I think Richard Gomrich also characterized the Buddha this way, as basically like a religious super genius. And I thought this was actually a really good description of the Buddha. I mean, this, like there's many, for example, you can, just kind of outside the Buddhist tradition, you hear stories of like saints and people that are incredibly inspiring, right? That live very, they're incredibly kind, they're very stable, that basically live their life in very noble ways, right? But the Buddha really stood out. If you read the suttas, as like somebody that's just is almost unbelievable. It's like it boggles my mind sometimes when I think about and read the suttas and think about like, how did he come up with this? Like this is just amazing to me. But just spending some time thinking about either the Buddha or the Dhamma or the Sangha, and this actually might help with. If you have, let's say, for example, doubt around whether this is going to work or is useful, sometimes doubt actually has more to do with doubt about oneself, right? It's not so much a doubt about the teachings or the teacher. It actually might be like, oh, well, maybe other people can do this, but this is impossible for me. Like I'm sort of. What is it? Sort of fatally flawed with so many defilements and hindrances that it's actually impossible for me to make any progress. And I think that probably my instinct around with the mind is sort of if it's in this sort of state, having had such experiences, maybe not very extreme, but it's actually worth spending some time getting a feel for the thoughts themselves, right? These kind of doubts usually manifest themselves in actual thoughts, or if you talk about with somebody else, they'll manifest itself in speech. And to give a feel, start to like really like spend some time like, how does the body feel when I'm thinking this? How does the body feel when I'm saying this? And I don't want to give away the punchline, but there are some. The body's not just neutral when it's thinking these. At least this body hasn't been, and I suspect other bodies are not necessarily going to be the same, and that might help when if you're experiencing a lot of doubt in this area. It might help kind of to I don't know. Pull away some of that seriousness around that doubt, or some of the kind of strength that doubt might have, because when you start to see that maybe this doubt isn't, how do you say, totally objective, or it might be conditionally based. It may not be the sort of the oracle of truth that it presents itself as. It might. It might be something that arises depending on certain situations, right? It may not be, you might say, oh, wait, this kind of doubt's really strong at this time of day, but not this time of day, or these circumstances, or not these circumstances. And then the other parts of the mind might get a little bit wiser to what's going on. And so that can help loosen that grip that doubt has. It also can be really useful if one is struggling with this, is actually to be around good spiritual companions and actually talk with others if one is experiencing such things. Because while you maybe feel like you're completely hopeless, other beings around you might see, actually, they might point out really good qualities you might have and things your mind has trouble seeing, right? And so that can help sort of maybe, again, sort of take away some of the punch or strength that hindrance has. So anyways, actually, I think it's usually is about half an hour. Yeah, okay. So I guess I'll end the reflection there, and I'll give some time for questions. So, do we do a chant or do anything, or?
Actually, I have a question.
Oh, 3 sadhus? Do we do 3 sadhus? We'll do 3 sadhus. Sure, okay. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. So now we're opening up to questions. Oh, sorry.
No, I had a good question.
Okay. Venerable Metiko has actually been very helpful walking me through this. This is, I know I've done this once before, but you have to apologize. I'm working my way through this. Okay. So first, let's go with the question here. The resident, Joe.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just wanted to comment on the doubt first. I had just read today about it. I think one of the antidotes for doubt is discrimination of qualities, or the Bojjhanga discrimination. So usually it goes, is this skillful or unskillful, wholesome or unwholesome, coarse or refined, or leading to dark or leading to light. So that's something that helps me with doubt. And my question is, I have some friends who have told me that metta is difficult for them. And I just read today that another option for people with ill will is contemplating the elements, the 4 elements, as an antidote for ill will, or maybe the 6 elements. And I was wondering if you could help explain how to do that in the court, like how to contemplate the 6 elements as an antidote for ill will.
Sure. So the question is, how does one contemplate the 4 elements or the 6 elements as an antidote to ill will? Did I get the question? Okay. So I guess one question for you before I try to answer that is, there's, like you said, with respect to ill will as opposed to independently, like I've been trying to understand.
Oh no, just as a kindness to someone who's having difficult with metta.
Okay.
They have another option that they're not aware of.
Right,
so
right.
Just wanted to put that out there into the world.
Right. So, so when one is using, let's say, a meditation like the 4 elements, I'm not familiar with the six elements of space and what?
Space and consciousness.
And space and consciousness, as an addition to the the regular 4 elements, which is earth, water, fire, and air. So the idea behind doing a meditation like that, or let's say a meditation on the parts of the body, or other related meditations, is that the mind will tend to start to see, experience, and phenomena in terms of parts, in terms of not, how do you say, not atta, or not self, right? They'll start to loosen a lot of these sort of perceptions around personalities and individuals. And so my instinct around that is that it may I'm not sure if that particular kind of meditation will, unless it's done like in a very persistent way, will actually sort of have, like, let's say, an immediate effect on ill will. It may, I don't know, offhand, but I would imagine that if it does have an immediate effect, it might just because the mind, that particular person might have a, let's say, it might more easily settle their mind. If that makes any sense. It might something that's more neutral. It's less about kind of involving people, right? And so it's something that can help settle the mind more. And so I would imagine that that it almost like kind of strikes me as a meditation that kind of similar to mindfulness of breathing. It's kind of like a soothing meditation, or something that the mind can settle on easily. So I think it's definitely worth trying, encouraging your friends to give that a try. Their minds might be successful at kind of using that kind of meditation if they're struggling with a lot of ill will, for example. But I would, again, like my intuition around that is like as a sort of like a kind of stronger antidote. It might require a little time for them to develop some momentum around it.
Just as a follow-up, may I?
Yeah, please.
So I read also in the Bhujanga Sutta that compassion has some sort of relationship with formless meditation of the infinity of space.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I thought maybe space as an element to contemplate had something to do with another avenue into compassion. Like, maybe there's something about space that's safe, maybe, or is that something maybe we could work through and figure out together?
Yeah, I mean, so the question is, you've read something. What it was in an article, or was a sutta
about the Brahma Viharas culminating in the liberation of beauty, liberation of space, and infinite consciousness and nothingness. And so space was associated with compassion, joy with infinity, infinite consciousness, and equanimity with nothingness, and loving kindness culmination in the beautiful.
Right. It is worth mentioning that the formless meditation, these are very high attainment. So like somebody that is able to develop these meditations, they're going to be far away from ill will by that point.
Yeah, it's more about like like knowing the law of nature, like that there's something about space that is related to compassion. So even if we can't fully attain a formless jhana state, that contemplating the safety of space.
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying. So, so basically the question is, if we contemplate space, space might have a sense of safety, and that might lead itself to compassion, things like compassion. Yeah, I would definitely encourage that. If I think that's actually really good to use your discernment, use your creativity. And if the mind is like I said, like if it's very agitated, right? It can't be with a meditation object. It's getting really pushed and pulled around, to really start to engage with it and see, oh, what's going to help it feel safe? What's going to help it feel at ease? Maybe the space element, maybe something like that, or maybe another element. I think it's really worth engaging with. Again, I don't have any personal experience with using the space object. So sorry, Metrico.
I would just for me, the elements, like it all, different people and their personalities, like it'll affect their minds differently. I found the space element, the expansiveness of the space element, and the fact that anything can be within space, more leading towards mind of equanimity. I find it the space element very soothing, and it does kind of calm the mind, but because of anything can be within the space element, it has this beauty of acceptance, which I find more lean towards the fact that I just balance. But everybody, as you do that elements, like I know it can affect your mind differently. The earth element I find very stabilizing. So I could see where that would kind of impact the idea of ill will, because it is so just grounding.
I hope people on the channel can hear Metika's. I'll summarize basically. Metika was just reflecting that from his experience, using the space element during meditation really helps with being very accepting, helping the mind be very open and large. So for himself, and that the using the earth element during meditation helps it being very stable and solid.
Stabilizing, brings the mind
down.
Yeah, I could see the will not arising. I do use the space element when there's agitation.
Okay, great. Let's let Daniel give. Please, you had a question.
Thank you. Yeah, I have heard a few times that restlessness and sloth and torpor, or restlessness and remorse and sloth and torpor, are opposites. But this doesn't make sense to me, because none of the other of the 5 hindrances are opposites, and also in my experience, I see them coexisting at times. Like for example, if you're so exhausted that you can't sleep, or if you're exhausted and you drink a bunch of coffee and you're all over the place, you're wired and you're exhausted. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are on, it seems like the antidotes can be applied to either of those, but would they fuel the other?
Right. So the question is you've heard that restless and remorse and sloth and torpor are opposites, and that the antidotes, basically the question is, but that hasn't been your experience. You can actually have both of those. I'll just simply say, yeah, that's been my experience too. And that, can you use the antidotes?
I wonder if would using the typical antidotes for restlessness fuel sloth and torpor, or the antidotes for sloth and torpor fuel restlessness.
Right. So I think I've heard that if for example, let's say you do a meditation and the mind becomes so at ease it may start to tip into kind of drowsiness. Like if let's say it's very agitated, and you start, let's say, do let's say mindfulness of breathing, and it starts to get very peaceful, and then it very easily slips into sleepiness or drowsiness. My feeling is that those are two different things, though, right? Like that. How do I say this? Like that. Like I feel like you can apply both of the antidotes, right? Like or whatever antidotes, and that they'll help. And that's similar to what you were saying before in the beginning. Yeah, I've seen both of those. You can be drowsy and very restless. In fact, I think it's probably possible to have like all 5 hindrances running through you. So yeah. I mean, yeah. I think I can see I can see why somebody would say there might be opposites, but again, my experience is you can have both at the same time. So yeah. So yeah, I think doing both the antidotes I think would be great if you're experiencing both. Please.
Tom, I wonder if maybe you have any thoughts that's kind of related to what Dan was saying, is that sometimes I notice that the sloth and torpor and restlessness, they're just two sides, instead of being opposites necessarily, they can sometimes be two sides of this. Like if you're mentioning if you're not interested, maybe you're not interested, so you just want to drowse out, or you're not interested, so you just get restless. And so the solution is the same of like, okay, how do I engage myself in this? And maybe other times it's the sloth and torpor is, it reminds me of the balancing, like the loop simile. Like you do the walking meditation to fix sometimes restlessness. Walking meditation helps because you get the restlessness out. Sometimes sloth and torpor walking, you have to balance it. So I wonder, do you think that you think the balancing kind of energy and looseness, and how those lean into restlessness and sloth and torpor, do you think that those are separate issues from the lack of engagement leading to restlessness and sloth and torpor? Or do you think that they're kind of like, would you classify those as kind of different states of mind almost? Is that too?
So the question is, well, first there was a good preamble to this, namely just noticing that Ethan was noticing that restless and remorse and sloth and torpor actually might be manifestations of the mind's not being interested in the particular meditation. And so it's more, instead of like being like two sides of the same coin, it's actually just a different manifestation of the same thing. But the question is like, is this sort of thing, the restless remorse and sloth and torpor, similar to energy and looseness? Is that the question? Or
yeah, I guess I'm wondering if you think that we should, if in your experience, more, I'm asking more of a like more from a practical angle than just abstract, but in your experience, do you think that it's best to kind of treat differently, for instance, the engagement leading to sloth and torpor and restless remorse versus just these states coming up, like for instance, being very restless? It's hard to word this in a simple, straightforward way. I'm trying to word it better.
Yeah, take your time.
Do you think that it's, I guess, in your experience, do you think that it's best when we're engaging with the hindrances, especially these two? Do you think it's best to kind of really work within them and try to find the cause and then fix it? Or do you think sometimes it's better to just kind of move away from it and disengage and find another solution? That would be a kind of more practical way of asking.
I see what you're saying. So the question is, when you're dealing with these two hindrances or hindrances in general?
These two more specifically,
These two,
because I find that they do flip a lot. They're very related almost.
Okay. With these two hindrances, namely restless and remorse, and or just maybe more restless side and the kind of sleepy, drowsy side, that it's worth. Is it better to engage with them more directly, or is it better just to kind of like take a step back and do something different? Is that the question?
Yeah. So, for instance, if we're restless and meditate, let's say sloth and torpor, sometimes when it's okay, if I'm really drowsy and the mind is just doled out, one way could be, okay, how can I engage myself more and kind of get involved and really try to fight that in the meditation by getting at the cause? or is it kind of just a losing battle and you should just redirect the mind, maybe do some walking meditation, or maybe do a different, just don't try to
Okay.
fight it, kind of.
I see what you're saying. So I see what you're saying. It's sort of like how much should we like we're in the middle of meditation. We're getting a sense it's starting to fade out. It's starting to get drowsy, and that's not really being able to be with the meditation object. Is this a time like how do you know like how much kind of effort you should put into it to kind of get it back on track versus okay, I should stop. I should do some walking meditation. Did I get it? Yeah, okay. And I actually, what I was thinking while you're asking that, actually, the thing that came to mind during all this was punya, and that is, I know that maybe not be a particularly satisfying answer, but it actually a lot of the meditation practices we're doing is we're actually getting a feel for this terrain, and that there isn't always going to be a like because you basically going to do both. And there's going to be times where, yeah, you just keep applying yourself, just keep putting energy, and like the mind is okay, it's back, right? And there's other times, okay, you're just like slumped over, and a half an hour goes by, an hour goes by, and you go, okay, that was pointless, right? And you'll learn that, you'll get a sense for that over time, and the main thing about doing this sort of thing is you're developing. It's sort of like you're developing, experiential wisdom in this, and it's worth sort of being willing to make mistakes, being willing to. You may have like I think one thing that's good to do is most people I know this myself will have a tendency to do one versus the other, right? There might be more of a tendency to, I'm just going to keep kind of powering through this, right? Or there might be a tendency to say, okay, got to change, and actually to do the other one that you don't normally do, right? And so if the mind tends to, let's say again, to power through things, okay, like, and you know that, okay, when this starts to happen, you go, okay, I'm gonna put this down. I know it has a tendency to always try to power through things. I'm going to get up and do some walking meditation, right? And you'll know that's hard because you'll see the mind not wanting to do that. You'll start to feel, no, or whatever. It doesn't want to stop, right? Wants it. And that gives you, like, wait, there's something else. There's another energy going on here, right? That there might be kind of a hindrance more front and center when you get to see, there's these other hindrances that are kind of more off to the side or in the back, right? And so that can start to get your mind get a more of a sense of itself, right? So that would be encourage yourself to play with this. Encourage yourself to try the opposite of what you tend to do. Just around just my own experience with restlessness. A lot of times it's like just like trying to go, okay, okay, the mind right now doesn't want to be with this object, like what is it needing right now? Like it's almost like how can I be sympathetic to the mind in the situation, right? So as opposed to like kind of thinking, okay, how do I like kind of like beat up this hindrance, right? Kind of coming to do a little left hook and a feint and across or something like that. I'm just kind of like, what is actually going to be helpful to the mind, right? It doesn't want to be with this. What will help it? So it's coming at from a different angle, a bit of a more friendly angle, right? And again, that's maybe another way, something else to play with. Let's get some. Yeah, we have I think a lot of questions, and it'd be good for me to practice trying to highlight some of these questions. Okay, here we go. First question is from, and I'll try to answer these quickly. Here we go. Oops. Okay, Rick asks, when we have the feeling of fear and anxiety, wondering if our sense desires will be taken away. Is this aversion or restlessness? Feeling of fear and anxiety is aversion or I mean, I think, I would put that more in the aversion, but it's not as important to like okay, it's definitely either this or that. It's more important to use the framework to get an idea where some of the antidotes are, and then try some of those antidotes, right? So you know that one of the classical antidotes to aversion is, metta, and one of the classical antidotes to restlessness is some sort of energy or meditation of brightness or light. Sorry, no, sorry, that's we're sloth and torpor. For restlessness, sorry, it's any sort of tranquilizing meditation. So it's actually to use that to give your mind an idea of what can help. So don't worry so much about trying to figure out exactly what your mind is doing. It can be helpful, but it's like, okay, if you think it might be both, then try both of the antidotes. Okay, Bhante, let's see, this is Manal, I hope I pronounced that right. Bhante, how are the hindrance and defilements related, please? So often the defilements, they're often more broader. So the hindrances are, in particular, those defilements in the mind that actively impede the mind from being with the meditation, right, and making progress in meditation. And but defilements can be coarse, like things that impede meditation, but they can be also very subtle as well. So there can be very subtle defilements all the way up to the point of arahantship. So one can, let's say, overcome the hindrances and start to develop very deep meditation, but these defilements, can be more subtle defilements still in the mind. So that's usually how it's described from my understanding. Okay, Kumu asks, at any given moment, is it only one of the hindrances is capable of being actively occupying the mind? Assume several of them occur after the other, but not at the same time. I mean, yeah, I guess if you're coming from that kind of moment to moment kind of analysis, that would make sense. I wouldn't be able to tell you one way or the other if it's possible. You can have two things rising simultaneously. My understanding, especially those that sort of have a kind of an Abhidhamma tradition, that's not possible. But yeah. My intuition is that probably not, but yeah, that's not, I mean, that's just speculation on my part, so I don't really know. So I'm just going to leave it alone. Okay. Anyways, Gayatri asks, Bhante, is it wholesome to use avoidance to get over an obsession? Does that really help to cultivate the right habits in the long term? Like in the case of the food example you gave. Yes. If you can avoid something and it, if it actually works, yeah, save yourself a lot of trouble and grief. You will have to, if it's something that you'll find, if you avoid something and then it comes back, you avoid it, okay, then it stops working. But yeah, if you avoid something and it stops becoming a problem, great.
I would say avoidance and suppression are two different things. And I think sometimes people confuse avoidance with suppression.
So Metiko was pointing out that if avoidance and suppression are two different things. So yeah, if you're like, something's coming to the mind and you're like, oh. Yeah. I mean, suppression is, it often gives a sort of a bad rap. And I think there's a reason for it as a bad rap, because it doesn't work in the long run. But it's also worth keeping in mind, if we weren't able to suppress things, we wouldn't be able to function very well. I mean, I'm kind of thinking about like I feel like there's like movies where like people like I feel like there's a movie where somebody just always blurting out whatever they thought. Somebody know this movie I'm talking about?
I think there's a movie where a guy can't. He's not able to lie. He's a lawyer.
There are medical conditions where people can't. They have no impulse control.
Mm-hmm. So Daniel's pointing out there's medical condition. People have no impulse control, and I can imagine that being interesting, being around such people, and probably frustrating too. So, anyways, it's just worth keeping in mind that you don't want to be suppressing things. It's a temporary thing, but we do need to use it's a skill, and it's important to. Like, if you have this incredible urge to, kill somebody, suppress it, this is a Buddhist monk saying this. So, but, that inclination to act out on this, that ill will or the hostility, it's going to be there. And so when you get out of that dangerous situation, yes, you're going to need to, okay, how do I deal with this? Apparently people love that. So, okay. I get Joe really likes that. Okay, good. Let's see. I have heard, okay. Oh, wait, hold on. Do I have to stop eating meat to be Buddhist? This is the day. No, you don't have to stop eating meat to be Buddhist. There's many people that eat meat that are Buddhists. The only thing I would say is, this was when I was a lay practitioner. I spent time, being vegetarian or vegan or neither, and just ate things. And the practice I actually found that was quite helpful for me was that I wouldn't restrict anything, but I'd always reflect before I purchase anything. And in particular, so let's say I go to the store, I'm about to buy something, I'd reflect, okay, where did this food come from? Where were the animals or people involved? Do I really want to buy this? And I allow myself that sort of opportunity to experience all of that. And actually what I found is, over time is I very rarely buy meat or dairy. But the important part of that exercise is being willing to give myself the time and space to be able to reflect on that. And that was actually very powerful, very important experience for me. So I don't know if that helps. Kumu S. I have heard that from some Dhamma talks that sloth and torpor sets in when the other four hindrances are absent and as the last attack on meditation by increasing energy. Virya. Sounds good. Rick, thank you, Venerable. I asked the question to better understand which solution will produce the best results. Okay. Gayatri, regarding the person was actually saying it was about suppression. So, yeah. And Joe has one final question. Is this 1 hour or an hour and a half?
What time is it?
It's 8:30.
Whatever you do.
Okay, we'll do one more question.
Thank you. I've been reading up on chanda, wholesome desire,
Yeah.
and the difference between tanha. And this question, and I haven't read this, so I'm mostly looking for clarification on this idea I have.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to sloth and restlessness, I read something from Ajahn Sona said that in terms of the enlightenment factor of energy, he mentioned metta as a wholesome energy.
Mhm.
And it got me thinking that if we are feeling a lot of sloth and restlessness,
Mhm.
could that be because our motivation might be off in terms of, I thought of the worldly concerns. Like if
Mhm.
I'm like, is this effort motivated by praise or a wanting praise or
Mhm.
pleasure or gain
Mhm.
or fame?
Yeah.
Would that make the practice cause us to be restless or slothful?
Mhm. So the question is,
Uh, sorry. So like metta would be a more clean energy.
right.
Yeah.
So the question is around these sloth and restlessness kind of back and forth, that maybe developing energy that's more wholesome, like metta, can be a way of addressing this, because perhaps some of the motivations we might have may be fueled by more unwholesome motivations. This is for meditation, or
No, I was in terms of, I guess, a better for clarification. Could the worldly concerns cause hindrances?
could the
Like,
worldly concerns?
yeah,
Of
like so
course.
praise and
Oh
belief.
yeah, definitely.
So should we be investigating what if those are? How do we investigate if those are coming into our practice?
Okay. So the question was, do worldly concerns affect our meditation? How do we investigate that?
Mhm.
And the answer is, yeah, definitely. So things like, desire for fame, desire to get lots of stuff. Yeah, definitely. And how do we investigate that? One thing I think is good to do in meditation from time to time is almost like to stop, and just take a step back. Just go, okay, why am I here? What am I doing? And to be honest, right? And for myself, I remember, like, as often I get into these modes of just like, okay, I just got to be with the breath. Just got to be with the breath. I mean, it's almost like it sees as this kind of like a challenge, and not being with the breath. The breath is like a front to my like. I'm just like a loser, but this kind of a very competitive thing, which is very common in our culture, right? Um, so I just use that as an example. So there's would be like kind of competition, right? And that might be something that's like around competition is related to praise, right? Because you want people that are good at competition, they're the winners, and they get all the praise, and you don't want to be the lose, and you get all the rejection. So it's worth, like, yeah, taking a step back and go, what is the energy that I'm using to meditate, right? Like, what's the energy that's motivating me right now to meditate, right? Maybe it's like, oh, I want to be here because, well, I don't want Ajahn to yell at me, or that's kind of like, well, it might be honest, and it's like you go like, wow, this is not very inspiring. I'm just meditating because I don't want the senior monk to like come after me or something. Um, and yeah, it's actually, yeah, again, it now at least gives you an idea. This is the terrain I'm in right now, right? This is the energy that I'm employing, and that's it sounds sort of silly, but this is what our minds do. They do silly things, and they get motivated by silly things, and it becomes when you reflect and see it, it becomes so obvious. Okay, this can't. No wonder this isn't working, right? No wonder this meditation is kind of blah, or it can't, and mine's not interested in being the object, or it's all over the place because the energy is off. And then you can go, okay, what can I do differently? And so being willing to take a step back from time to time, I think is very helpful. Oh, one more question. Oh, no. Okay. Maybe we'll end it with that. So
Usually.
do we just say like sadhu, or we'll just say sadhu at the end? Okay. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. The sadhus are kind of like the way we virtually do bows. Like we can't really, I mean, we could bow, but it's not going to be very interesting. So we can do sadhus on the live stream. Okay. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Okay.
I'm going to be back tomorrow.
Oh yes. We'll be back tomorrow and we'll have
Tomorrow
a,
morning, I think there should be somebody doing a talk at 8 o'clock.
okay. Tomorrow morning, there'll be a talk with somebody at 8 o'clock.
And at 7:30, there is a monastic from Sri Lanka.
Okay. And tomorrow night at 7:30, there'll be a monastic from Sri Lanka.
That you're going to help host. Yeah?
Yes, I'm going to be here to help host this wonderful venerable. Okay, so hope to see you, everybody, tomorrow. All right, bye-bye. Let me end the broadcast.